Previously on Podcast Without Pretense.
Iyaz, why are you insisting on only speaking in Ghostbusters quotes?
If somebody asks if you're a god, Ray, you say you're a god.
Wow, that's so wrong.
Screw it. I'm going to be quiet this time. I'm done with you guys. Silence. That's what you get.
That episode was full of inaccurate Ghostbuster quotes.
It's true. This man has no penis. Wait, no, I mean dick.
I'm like, you have to put me on the spot with Ghostbusters, which you know I suck at. So basically,
I went with a movie that is known for being one of the most quotable fucking movies in the world.
No, I just don't watch it enough to like retain that damn movie, and I know it's like I have a lot of blind spots when it comes to my nerd culture, and Ghostbusters, for some reason, no matter how often I watch that fucking movie, it never sticks. Never sticks.
I specifically went with that one because I thought there was at least a 97% chance you'd be able to pull one out of your ass.
I should have just said hello.
Well,
That's
I think this also proves that none of us actually watched the show after we recorded because I have no idea what you guys are talking about. Not a clue.
Hello, I'm Iyaz Akhtar.
Hello, I'm Jonathan Strickland.
And I'm Eric Sandine.
And together
we are
the three guys who get together and podcast without any pretense whatsoever.
That'd be correct.
So guys,
Yes.
I went to DragonCon this weekend.
Why?
This past weekend. What's that?
Why'd you do that?
Because I was
because it was a con.
I was invited to be a guest.
Yeah, if you're invited to a con, I don't.
Yeah, I was a guest of.
Have you been invited to a con, Iyaz?
No, I've not been invited to a con.
You've been required to go to conferences.
Yes,
that's slightly different. Yeah, I went DragonCon, a huge science fiction fantasy fan convention. One of the largest fan conventions in the United States. It's not as big as something like Comic-Con, but Comic-Con's more like an industry convention. And DragonCon is definitely more about the community. Sometimes
it's definitely the biggest one.
What's that?
It was in Atlanta, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's in Atlanta. Yeah, huge in Atlanta. Yeah, the biggest science fiction convention in Atlanta by far. Really the biggest one, I think, in the Southeast United States. And it's a decent size. It's also in a smaller space than some of the other really huge cons. It's spread out over multiple hotels. I think there's 4 hotels, maybe 5. Actually 5 hotels that house programming. But they're all within a few blocks of each other. So most of them are actually connected to one another using pedestrian bridges. So you don't even have to go outside between several of the hotels. And it's usually a pretty fun event. And this year was fun too. I was a guest of the podcast track as well as the science track. And I did a couple of panels for the steampunk track, as well as doing some work for How Stuff Works and for Forward Thinking. So it was a really busy weekend for me, and that's why my voice is blown out. I'm exhausted and in need of sleep. And I did promote Podcast Without Pretense multiple times.
How did you do that?
I told people that if they really want to get in on the ground floor and join the first 10 listeners for Podcast Without Pretense, then they need to act within the next 6 months.
Did you tell them they'll get a sticker? Because I still have to order the sticker.
Well, see, Eric, until there are stickers to actually deliver, I don't want to promise them something I can't guarantee they'll ever get.
I'll order them this week.
But no, it was fun. Actually, quite a few people came up to tell me that they listened to Podcast Without Pretense. They very much enjoy it. They didn't seem to have anything wrong with them, so I suspect we're doing something right. But anyway, it was a lot of fun. What's that?
Clearly that was you talking to yourself in the mirror every morning. Like, I listen to Podcasts Without Pretense. It's a good show.
The longer the con went, the more realistic that scenario sounds to me. But it was fun. Although I will say, it was also very strange. The best panel I think that I was part of, that wasn't. I was a guest on Daily Tech News Show with Justin Robert Young and Veronica Belmont as well. And that was a blast. the four of us, so Tom Merritt up there too, the four of us had a really good time discussing the tech show. And Lynn Peralta was sketching that day too. So I actually am in a Lynn Peralta sketch, which was a huge thrill for me. So all of that was fun. But that I don't really consider that a panel. My favorite panel that I was on was about science news and science reporting and why there's so much bad science reporting out there and some of the things that contribute to that. That was actually a really fun discussion. I was up there with an astronomer, a rocket scientist, and a marine biologist who specializes in sharks. And then there's me.
Wait. You weren't there with Phil Plait, were you?
No, Phil Plait was not on that.
But
no, it's Dr. Pamela Gay, actually, who was the astronomer. Phil Plait, I think, was there, but I never ran into him. At any rate,
anyway,
it was a really good panel, and the audience seemed to very much enjoy it, and I very much enjoyed myself. The ones that I felt the weirdest about, I did 2 panels for the steampunk track, and I was really looking forward to them going into the weekend, but I don't know if people enjoyed them or not. It was a very quiet crowd, and I couldn't tell if I just wasn't connecting with them. Maybe they didn't. Maybe their sense of humor and my sense of humor were just incompatible.
Jonathan, it says Victorian ethics. I mean,
it could very well be. It could very well be. It could be that it's just not polite in Victorian society to laugh uproariously at someone's jokes.
Right.
At any rate, yeah, it was just one of those experiences where have either of you ever had to speak in front of a crowd of people and experience what it's like to get nothing back?
Yes, once.
Yeah, I've done that before.
It's tough because you want to pour a little more energy into your delivery or whatever in order to compensate for the fact that you're not getting anything back. And the more you pour in, the more exhausted you are if that continues. I mean,
well, and sometimes the more you lose them. Like
that's also true.
The more active you become. Yeah,
that's also true. So whenever you're in front of an audience where they're really responding well, then that's a great feeling, right? It's easy to ride that and just have a great time. But the opposite is also true. If you're in front of a crowd and they're very quiet, it can just feel like you're sinking. And you know, metaphorically that's what's happening, but literally that's what it feels like. And that happened to me both times for the steampunk track. I did one for how steam engines work, just to talk about the principles behind steam engines and why steampunk, as far as an aesthetic, is fine, but for a reality would never quite work out the way you had intended, because no one wants to have a boiling container of water strapped to them for obvious reasons. And then I did one that was a debate. It was the Tesla versus Edison debate, and I represented Nikola Tesla. And I mean, I won the
Wait. Are you telling me that there were people there who were supporting Edison through this whole thing, and you were the devil's advocate?
I was the Tesla advocate.
Yeah.
And there were a few people who did support Edison. I won, hands down because the way they judged the winner was it was a charity drive. And they had 2 collection boxes out, one for Edison, one for Tesla, and all proceeds went to the Atlanta Food Bank. And Tesla won out 2-1, a little bit more than 2-1, I think. And so I handily won in that sense, but it was a weird experience because
the audience was just giving you nothing.
The audience wasn't giving me much, but beyond that, the moderator for the event had made a 56-minute long film that was essentially a love letter to Tesla, and seriously bought into like the Tesla mythology on a level that I'm not entirely comfortable with. I don't, there are many things that are attributed to Tesla that I think are misleading or not really representational. They don't represent the truth. So sure. I was trying to make a point, and she would butt in and try to substantiate it with stuff that I really didn't think was either relevant or based on evidence.
So you had
And
a bad moderator. Is
I don't want to call her bad. She was very passionate about the subject. In fact, by the end of it, I felt that she should have been the advocate for Tesla. It should have been between her and the guy who was advocating for Edison, and that would have been a better. People would have enjoyed that more because
right.
she was much more feisty about it than I was. And I was just, frankly, I was getting uncomfortable because I wanted to represent Tesla in a realistic way. I felt that, I felt that I had a good position, but it was getting harder and harder to do that in that environment. So I began to feel like this crowd would have much more benefited with her being the advocate and if I had just not been part of it. So I kind of felt guilty by the end of it that I really didn't belong in that space. So that was really, and since it was a charity event, that really made me feel bad because if it meant that people didn't donate as much as they would have otherwise, then that's really awful. So, those two events out of all of them, I felt like were a little shaky, and I probably will stay out of the steampunk track. They're great people. They're super nice people. I just feel like I was a bad fit. So I don't mean to say anything about them. They seem very passionate about what they love. I just didn't connect with them.
You were the person saying, "Well, here's why X, Y, and Z won't work."
Yeah,
and
that's also true.
it sucks to be that guy, which is what you were being. Yeah.
Well, and I tried to couch it in as much, friendly terms as possible. I didn't want to say like I love the steampunk aesthetic. It really appeals to me. I mean, I find it aesthetically pleasing.
Oh no,
But,
I just bought awesome steampunk cufflinks and a tie clip. Like they're gorgeous, but
yeah. So I mean, I just think I think they'll be better served finding people who just resonate with that crowd a little more. And I just feel bad. I hope that I didn't contribute to, like, I hope I didn't give people a bad show is really what it comes down. I'm mostly being hard on myself here. But the other
But you
panels
always
I was
are.
on,
So get over it. You're amazing, Jonathan. Like, come on.
Just,
I'll give you a pat back. You are amazing.
Time is a precious commodity at these conventions. I mean, if you spend an hour at a panel, it means you're missing out on lots of other stuff. So I just don't want anyone. Yeah. But it wasn't like people left in big groups or something. So I think that at least there's that. It didn't feel like people were losing so much interest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm very surprised that you want to be taken off the track as opposed to coming back next year as like a bigger villain. You could come out with like a luchador mask and just like completely just crap on the movement and see if they actually respond at all. Maybe they just respect you so much they're in awe. But if you went full heel and went evil,
I'm okay with this.
I would only want to go full heel if they knew it was okay to give me heat.
As long as you were like twirling the mustache, I think, during your points and like tying somebody to railroad tracks in a steampunk aesthetic as it would be.
Then like they would get the spirit of it.
Yes, exactly. And then maybe they just kind of chill out.
Or they should replace the Edison versus Tesla with you against the steampunk fantasy person with a moderator.
Oh, maybe. I don't know. I think they could have a lot more fun without me, to be honest. But I mean, everyone there was super nice. I just hope that I wasn't an anchor for that track. I didn't hear like an anchor as in pulling them down, not as in securing them. But the rest of the weekend was really good. I did a science variety show where I had to give a 4-minute presentation, scientific presentation using a PowerPoint slide I had never seen in a discipline that I am not connected to.
That's really fun. I've done that before. So they have not necessarily with the science part.
Yeah,
but
it was challenging.
They have a thing. I think it's called Spark or Ignite, where it's like a community thing where everybody gives like. I think you get 10 slides and a certain amount of time. right?
I think
Um,
they did that for the skeptics track, and it was you got 5 minutes and 20 slides,
yeah.
which is
Oh,
kind of
20 slides.
crazy
Yeah.
how fast you have to go
Um,
through.
but yeah, Ignite is just that, where everybody gets up and does their presentations on things they're doing around the community and whatever, blah blah blah, whatever. But then during Ignite, they have what they call a reverse Ignite, where the sponsors give you slides about what the sponsors do, but they have to leave off all branding and everything like that. And so you get up, and you've never seen these slides before, and you have to give this presentation on whatever it is the sponsors do with their slides for I think 3 minutes or something like that.
Well,
And usually they do it in pairs, and I did it and completely failed
yeah,
on what the sponsor did.
we had in ours it was various science communicators, and the everyone had a different presentation. So the first guy was an anthropologist, and his presentation was on Muon One network distributed computers, and he killed it. He was
That's
just
awesome.
so funny. He was so. I mean, it was like as soon as you saw him, you're like, how the hell am I going to follow that? I was the third person on the list. The
Yeah.
second one was a guy who specializes in infectious diseases and sexually transmitted diseases, and his presentation was on bulk water movement through plant systems. And so that also ended up being, it got very blue, but it was very, very funny. And then it was me, and I get up there and I say, well, I should be all right as long as it's not organic chemistry or something. And then I turn around and the slide says, making sense of organic chemistry. And I turn back,
Well,
I turned back to the crowd and I said, son of a bitch.
that
Now,
had a good
here's
laugh.
where what's
Yeah,
that?
that's how you win the crowd over. Like,
Oh,
come
I
on.
got a big laugh. But the secret to this was that I could see the laptop where the presentation was
Oh,
being
with the
loaded but had
notes.
not yet hit the big screen. So I saw that it was organic chemistry. I'm like, well, I'm going to go ahead and make one joke that I know will hit because I can't guarantee any others will. The one joke I am actually proud of because I'm going through and I'm like I hit one where it was a whole bunch of molecules, organic chemistry molecules, so lots of carbon molecules with carbon in them. And I see there's like three of them, and I just kind of gave a slow burn to the audience. Everyone's kind of laughing at me, and instead of I open up my mouth to say something, and instead I just hit the button to go to the next slide, and it's three even more complicated molecules. And at that point, the crowd was just dying. And so it said, "Can you name these molecules?" And people told me I had to name them. So I named one Frank, I named one Ethel, and the third one was just a series of carbon and hydrogen pairings over and over. It was like CH dash CH dash CH. I said, and this one is ch 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 because it's said just like it's spelled, and that one got a big laugh. So I was glad for those. But everyone else, I mean, everyone did. Everyone's presentation was hilarious, either because they were so quick on their feet that they just had a really good time putting stuff together, or because it just failed so spectacularly that you were laughing because you realized how ludicrous the whole premise was. I mean, the guy who specialized in sharks had to give a presentation on the solar system and the magnetosphere. And there was a kitchen scientist. So it's a woman who has published some books for kids for science experiments that they can do with common kitchen stuff. And hers was on invisibility technology. And I was kicking myself. I'm like, son of a bitch. I could have done this all about metamaterials and I was like, well, I mean, and I understand that's the game, right? That's the whole point. But the crowd seemed to have a really good time, so I was very pleased with how that one turned out. The convention overall was great. I heard some fantastic stories about some of the panels. I didn't get to go to any of the other. I didn't get to go to any panel that I wasn't already on, so I didn't get to see any of these things. But I heard that Cary Elwes, who was the guy who was in Wesley in The Princess Bride, I heard that he absolutely charmed everybody at his panel, where he got up instead of sitting behind a table and talking to people, like in a huge ballroom, and has a microphone and just sits there. Instead of doing that, he actually got up and grabbed the microphone and apparently walked all around the audience and engaged people in actual conversation and took pictures with folks in the middle of his panel. I mean, and he's one of the more popular guests, just because the fandom is for Princess Bride in particular is so strong. And apparently Terry Gilliam did something pretty similar. Terry Gilliam was there and sat on the edge of the stage, and during the Q&A session for his panel, he took a chair out and sat on the chair on the front of the stage. So he got out in front of the table he had been behind, and that way he was on the same eye level as people who were standing up and asking questions at the microphone, and he would deliver the answers to that person, using a microphone, but he's looking at the person, and shook everyone's hand at the end of every question. And I'm just thinking, well, this is really cool. Someone who has reached this level of success and fame and fan adoration, having this kind of, taking the effort to have these moments, I thought was really charming. I would imagine that if I were in that position, it would be really tempting to kind of try and keep a divide up between, you and the audience, just because otherwise you're making yourself vulnerable, and it's, but these guys just embraced it, which is pretty cool.
I was going to say I had a good segue, and then you started talking about Terry Gilliam. But speaking of Mowage, Mowage, I was up in Denver this weekend to officiate my sister's wedding, which was a lot of fun, and it was gorgeous. It was at Red Rocks. Have you guys been up to Red Rocks?
I have not. It
is the most beautiful place to see a concert. Like, absolutely gorgeous. The amphitheater is amazing. But the entire place was insanely gorgeous. And, I had this nice speech prepared that, so the night before I'm officiating, I realized, oh, crap, this speech can be better. And there's grammatical errors in the one that I've actually written. So my brother, my girlfriend, and one of the bridesmaids, and my sister, not the one I'm wedding.
You got married to your sister?
Yeah, I know. It's so hard to change those turns of phrases around. But anyway. So we go through this speech until, I don't know, 1 o'clock in the morning. And we have to wake up at 7 to go to the wedding. And we get it, and it's perfect. It's great. And then I go to print it out in the morning, and I realize that I've emailed myself the wrong speech. I realized that about 10 minutes before I was about to walk up and marry and officiate them. So anyway, didn't matter. But speaking of the crowd thing, mainly I'm standing up there and I start reading the speech, or I don't start yet. And they, best man groom walks down the aisle. Sister walks down the aisle, doing fine. Dad walks down the aisle with the sister, and I start choking up because I realize he's crying. Then Mom walks down the aisle, and she's crying, and that's when I start choking up. So I am standing there realizing that I'm choking up, and I have the wrong speech. So I start reading it anyway, because I'm like, I got nothing else to say. And I remember the parts that I changed enough that I think I can do it on the fly. But I'm choking up the entire time while I'm reading it, and then we get to their vows. And so my sister had sent me an email like, here's how we want the ceremony to go, just fill in everything else. And I was like, perfectly fine, yeah. They were supposed to send me their vows. They didn't send me their vows. So there was a part in the speech that actually said, Kristen and Ben read vows. And I get to that part in the speech, and my sister looks at me and goes, you're supposed to have the vows. And I'm like, well, I don't have the vows. And I just looked at both of them, and I'm like, wing it. And so they did them on the fly, and they were pretty good. Nice. But anyway, so the long story short of that is,
I promise I will always email you when I say I will.
Yes. And And so ultimately, the funny thing about that is that, like, I read the wrong speech. I was choking up the whole time, and I didn't have their vows. Not my fault on that one. But the as I'm walking out, one of the groom's relatives walks up to me, and she's like, "You know what? That ceremony was amazing, and everybody's gonna remember it because you looked up and just said, 'Wing it.'" So it was a lot of, like, I think the funny thing about weddings, though, is how stressful it is for everyone else at the wedding. Like,
Yeah.
not even just being the officiant and stuff, but we were setting up the dining hall. Things were wrong with the sound system. Like, of course, it's my sister, so I'm running around trying to fix whatever I can at any one point. But it's super stressful. But it was a lot of fun. I got to write a speech, wear a suit.
You got to write 2 speeches.
I did get to write 2 speeches. The best part about this is, so I finish up and I'm at the reception with the groom's brother, my brother-in-law's brother, I suppose, and they introduce him to read his speech. He was also the best man, and he's a professional speaker. Like, that's what he does for a living. And I'm like, wait. You guys had me write and read a speech and choke it out while I was up there the entire time. And your brother does this for a living? This is horrible. And I'm sorry I was punished by you, and I don't know what I did.
Oh, 12.
It was great. I didn't work in any Princess Bride, mainly because it didn't fit into the speech, and I probably couldn't have choked it out, really.
Yeah. Well, no, that's fair.
And how many people would have gotten the reference? Probably everyone. But
it depends. I mean, there are crowds who certainly have not seen that movie, and of course, there are generations who haven't at this point. And the hard thing is showing people that movie. Like, if you're in a group setting, it's really hard to show someone that movie if they've never seen it before, because there's going to be at least 1 or 2 jerks who are going to quote the goddamn movie all the way through, either saying the line just before the character gets a chance to say it or at the same time.
Or laughing before it happens.
Yeah. I remember going to Governor's Honors Program, and there was a screening of that film in one of the dorms, and I went to go see it, having seen it a billion times before. And there were like 5 or 6 people who had never seen the movie, but in the group of maybe 75 folks, everyone else had seen the movie. And I told the 5 people, I'm like, you are probably not going to enjoy this experience. And I was right. I think all 5 of them had left before the movie had gotten 30 minutes into it, just because it was out of control.
Seeing it that way seems like taking, I mean, to a lesser extent, seeing it that way seems like taking somebody to a midnight showing of Rocky Horror who's never seen Rocky Horror before.
But that's the way you're supposed to experience that movie. You're supposed to experience
now
it
that I
going
think about
to
it,
the
that would be
live floor show without ever having seen it before.
Yeah.
I mean, I had seen Rocky Horror, the movie, before having seen it in the live audience group. So that was, I'd never had the experience of going to the live floor show type thing without having seen the movie already. So,
well, have you
ever watched Rocky Horror?
I have yet to see Rocky Horror in any form whatsoever.
Excellent. What? Keep that going, Iyaz. And if you come down to Atlanta to visit, I will take you, because there's a theater, the Plaza Theater, every Friday night does a Rocky Horror Picture Show screening, including the live floor show cast, and you can experience it the way it was intended. Well, not the way it was intended, but certainly the way it's experienced now.
I'm hearing your guys' stories on the weekends, and I'm like, what the hell do I do with my time? Because I have nothing as interesting as that. Like, my weekend was, my son was over, and I spent a lot of time with him, like chasing him around parks, and then eventually taking him to like a museum.
Like a pretty awesome story. So I don't know.
It's not as like I was speaking at a convention, and like I did yell at a bunch of kids, because they were like one of them kicked my son, so I got really angry and I yelled, "Hey!" And this like it seemed like the entire park heard me because like it felt like everybody froze for like a half a second because I'm like, oh man, I'm an adult and I'm screaming at a kid and they don't even know why.
Well, the nice thing is, Iyaz, you probably could have taken him.
Yeah, I think this little this guy who kicked my son was about 3 or 4.
I like how you describe him as this guy who kicked my son.
This little guy.
It's like 3 or 4.
Well, you know, I wanted to be like, listen, you fucking asshole, get away from my kid. But you can't really say that at a children's park. I mean, you can, but it's not a good idea.
No, it's considered poor etiquette.
Yeah, I was less than pleased about that, and my son's really kind of he's way nicer than I ever was. So I couldn't understand what the hell was going on because he was like trying to play tag and trying to enjoy, like have fun with these kids. And eventually they got into a scuffle. The tag got a little strange. And I'm like, okay, this is a mess. And that was like the only weird parts of this because otherwise
that's like the quote of the night. The tag got a little strange.
Yeah, they were playing tag and it got a little out of hand. And so we got to spend some time
that also use that description. The tag got a little strange.
We also went to the Museum of Natural History again, and he was super psyched to see the pterosaur exhibit that we thought we had paid for the last time he was over here, but we didn't technically because there was like some extra fee and whatever. And so we finally got to see this.
Gotcha. So it's one of those exhibits where you have to pay an extra admission in order to get there. Is it one where it's timed as well? There are banks of times?
Yeah, so you have to come in at a certain time, and we showed up 20 minutes earlier, so they're like, you can get in. So fine. So we go in, and like we basically have the whole exhibit to ourselves because like the last people there are stragglers from the original like 1 o'clock or like the 12:30. So it's the people that have been hanging out for an hour. So it's just us and like another couple of families. And so my kid gets to run around, do everything. And we basically finished the entire exhibit in 10 minutes. And then I see the gift shop, and I'm like, oh, fuck, he's going to want to buy something. And also, I certainly don't think I got $20 worth yet. So I said, let's go back around. So we go back all the way to the beginning, and then like the huge, masses of families come in because it's already now time for the new time. So everybody came in. I was like, okay, I'm really glad we got to see all of these exhibits without having to be crowded. Because my kid was like, he wanted to check extra something, but like the exhibit he saw already. He's like, I want to see more about this. So he didn't have to worry and wait in line for stuff, which was really helpful. And then I had to convince him to buy only one toy, which was a set of dinosaurs, which is one toy. I'll give him that. And he didn't make me, he got like 5 of them. Yeah. I'm like, well, I can only give you one thing because I have a small apartment. I want to keep everything here. And so he got like 6 or 7 dinosaurs. So smart guy.
So he chose an array of things.
Yeah,
in a set.
One box, and they are cheaply made dinosaurs whose jaws open. And then I think I'm looking at an Allosaurus right now that's missing its lower jaw because
clever boy.
It's a piece of shit of toy. There you go. That's my weekend.
Did I tell you guys about the time? It was just recently. I can't remember if I talked about this on the previous episode or if we haven't recorded since then. Did I tell you about my trip to D.C. where I went to the International Spy Museum?
No. Oh, I've been there a long time ago. Yeah, when I used to work down there.
So I went to the Spy Museum for the first. Nice.
Got a
little guest star dinosaur. I went to the Spy Museum for the first time.
Pretty legit.
What's that?
I said the legs move, the head moves. That's a pretty legit toy. Come on.
There's some good articulation on these. Like the necks move, the tails move even. So like if they want to change the posture, like that's kind of neat. The jaws move, but the jaws aren't exactly.
When I was a kid, if you got a plastic dinosaur, it was all just one big solid brick.
Yep.
There's no articulation at all. In fact, all it was a brick of plastic, and you were told it was a dinosaur. It didn't even look like one. It's just a big like rectangular brick.
I actually have
being a kid.
My kid dinosaur. Still have it.
Okay, don't we usually talk about stupid movies on this show? Because I know I've tried to watch movies.
You want to talk about Absolute Zero?
I do want to talk about Absolute Zero because I tried to watch this movie 3 times.
I was gonna hope we weren't gonna talk about it because I fell asleep 20 minutes in.
Okay,
this is perfect. Okay, great. So we got 20 minutes.
let's explain what we do. We pick movies on Netflix that we think will be pretty awful, and then we test our attention spans by turning on those movies and not having any distractions present. No second screens, no other people if we can help it, no alcohol, because if I can't drink it, those guys can't drink it. And we try and see how far we get. We write down how far we get. After that point, we can either walk away if we're sane, or we can attempt to continue watching the movie, but with distractions in play. So, this week, the movie was Absolute Zero. Oh, excuse me, Absolute Zero, which is a terrible, terrible movie about a catastrophic climate change that takes course over the span of like a 24-hour period, in which Miami, Florida, reaches temperatures of absolute zero. It stars nobody of any merit, and it's terrible. So Eric got about 20 minutes in and then fell asleep. Is that true?
That's about it. I got some horrible green screens and then I fell asleep, I believe.
Well, I've got a whopping 0 minutes. I watched it at work.
Okay. Well, at least as far as I know, there wasn't any like nudity in this one, right?
No, so in this movie, there's a lot of like stock footage of Miami beaches, so there are women in bathing suits, but nothing like.
And one of the characters is played by a former Playboy playmate,
an aging Playboy playmate, Erica Laniak. So she's
let's
respect it.
Yeah. And she's terrible in it, by the way. She's just absolutely, like, her delivery is absolutely awful. Actually, everyone's terrible in this. I got 36 minutes into this, and then I turned it off because it was so boring and dumb that, like, it wasn't dumb enough to be entertaining. It was just boring as hell. So I turned it off, walked away, was pretty much determined that I was gonna not revisit it. But I did kind of skip around a little bit before we started recording this just to kind of see if there was anything else I wanted to make note of. I didn't really make that many notes because, again, it was really boring. The movie starts with this climatologist going to Antarctica to look into some weird stuff, and he's being sent on behalf of an enormous corporation, which is represented by this one slimy asshole dude who his role in the movie is to be the uncaring businessman who just wants to make money off of human misery. And I mean, I swear, like he would just needed a curly mustache to twiddle the entire fucking movie, because that's how nuanced a character he was. If there was a scene with him, he was going to say something in that scene that would make him sound like the most unethical, money-grubbing asshole on the face of the planet. There were no redeeming features about him whatsoever, at least in all the scenes I saw. Maybe, I mean, one, I assume he dies, but I didn't get to that part. And two, I assume he doesn't do anything to redeem himself. Maybe I'm wrong.
Wait. So did none of us finish the movie?
Did you finish it, Iyaz?
I did finish this movie.
So, Iyaz, do you want to tell us what happened? Because Eric and I didn't watch it. I do have a couple of notes about some of the stuff I saw, but...
All right. So, the way this movie goes... all right. So, we got the beginning with it. We got this Iceman that's dead in this rescue mission. There's a bunch of scientists that Interpsi sends to go check out this chasm. We keep going into this movie. We're finding out that I believe the poles are shifting.
Yeah.
Like left and like they're basically north is going to switch to south, and south is going to switch to north. That's what's going to happen.
And I think the frozen guy in the Antarctic is supposed to be a human from 10,000 years ago, which indicates that at some point Antarctica was supposedly a much different climate, and then the poles shifted, Antarctica became super cold, and this guy essentially instantly froze at that time. And then the implication is that the poles are about to do this crazy shift again, and the same thing is going to happen, only this time it's going to happen apparently specifically in downtown Miami.
So I'm watching this movie while I'm at work. I'm barely paying attention to this damn thing because there's nothing of note other than the phrase "science is never wrong." I believe that's the quote. I might not remember a goddamn thing about Ghostbusters, but I remember this fucking line because it could become a drinking game in this actual movie. Now, the lead is played by
an actual movie. It was a made-for-TV movie.
True. Because if you watch the beginning of it, like I've watched the beginning 3 times. I've been trying to watch this movie and pay attention to it. The first time I was at work, so I could. It wasn't that I couldn't pay attention to it. It was just so dull that it never grabbed my attention, even with the chance of like, oh, well, look at that, nothing, because they were using a lot of stock footage, and there was a whole ton of graininess when it came to the stock footage, which made sense. But then we had a nice, like, clean print when it came to any of the movie scenes.
And it's just there's nothing, like, none of the characters are interesting. You don't have any, like, The Day After Tomorrow at least has ridiculous over the top scenes of natural destruction going on. So you've got your destruction porn happening. This one was trying to do the same thing, only without the benefit of that kind of budget. So you really didn't like I remember one of the sequences I saw as I was fast forwarding through was the characters watching a news report in which an iceberg is floating near Miami, and everyone's freaking out because no one had predicted this, no one had seen the iceberg, no one had tracked it, and it was unusual that an iceberg could have split off from presumably the North Pole or South Pole area and then drifted as far as Miami without anyone noticing it. And the whole time, the footage of the iceberg is such that it's shot where you just see the top, like the edge and top of what looks like a block of ice, and you can see like a building in the background, but there's nothing that actually really indicates like the geography of what's going on.
This is like this forced perspective. Like if you're watching the video of this, that's basically like somebody takes like an ice cube and they're like, we're going to put it this close to camera, and my head would be the building. And it's like, oh, wow, that's terrifying. Because it's a glacier that moves obviously at glacial speeds. So it's not like it's some out-of-control glacier that's going to plow into Miami and destroy it. It just shows up at the beach, and everyone's like, shit, it's getting dark here because it's a giant block of ice.
Yeah, I assume... I mean, they never... I skipped around at that point, so I didn't see if they ever came up with an explanation of why there was an iceberg floating near Miami.
Nope.
Okay, because you think, well, if it broke off from one of the poles and then floated toward Miami, it is really weird that no one detected it. If what they're trying to suggest is that ice formed off the coast of Miami, it wouldn't be like an iceberg. I mean, that's something that breaks off. It's not something that just forms spontaneously in the ocean. You would have just freezing happening if the water somehow got that cold that fast. You wouldn't just have like an iceberg in the middle. That makes no sense. So I didn't know what the point was for that. I will say this. There's supposedly like an eclipse, I guess. The sun goes down and there's some sort of eclipse, and that's part of what makes it so cold. Meanwhile, you've got these poles shifting. Anyone who has even an inkling of scientific knowledge knows that magnetic poles shifting wouldn't mean that the entire...
Everything just freezes.
Yeah. Weather patterns would change, but they wouldn't change. You wouldn't have like entire temperate zones turning into Arctic or tropical going to Arctic or Arctic going to desert. That wouldn't necessarily happen. And it certainly wouldn't happen over the span of a few hours. And you never would get the Earth going to absolute zero. The absolute zero means that you have no molecular movement. That's 0 Kelvin. It means there's no molecular movement whatsoever. Even empty space is usually...
And that was the thing that I was waiting for you, Jonathan, to comment on, mainly because because they say that in the first like 5 minutes of the movie, and I'm just like, no, that's not possible.
And in no way in the entire movie they never ever qualify by saying we're saying it's virtually absolute zero, like it's really close to, and we know it will never reach there. They consistently state absolute zero. And the lead scientist consistently yells it to whoever will listen because he wants to make it very certain that absolute zero is a very bad and dangerous thing. Meanwhile, I'm watching this movie and listening to this phrase. I'm like, I cannot wait for Jonathan to destroy this movie. Because I'm like, I don't remember much about science classes, but I'm like, I'm pretty sure that's fucking impossible or near impossible.
Okay.
Theoretically impossible.
We would have to have the Earth transported into deep space where there's nowhere near a star for us to even get close to absolute zero. You're talking about no molecular movement whatsoever, which is something you don't really even find in space. Like in space, you normally have a little molecular movement, so you're just a little bit above absolute zero. That's why some people talk about some of the superconductors being cooled to temperatures that are colder than what you would typically find in space. Not only that, but you guys know what happens if you cool down a gas to sufficient temperatures, right? It condenses into a liquid.
It'll become
so
a liquid.
At absolute zero, our atmosphere would be a liquid atmosphere. Our atmosphere would fall from the sky as a liquid atmosphere. We'd have liquid oxygen, liquid nitrogen, liquid hydrogen. All of this would liquefy. And that would most certainly kill us. So even if somehow you managed to get inside, the fact that you would
humans
no
are a
breathe
resilient species, Jonathan.
Yeah.
Well, I love that this is what Jonathan is saying right now. If you guys aren't looking at the IMDb factual error section like I am, he's saying this is the first error in the actual list. Once absolute zero is attained, all gases and liquids turn into the solid states. The Earth should be flooded by its liquefied atmosphere before turning solid once absolute zero is reached. And by the way, since you guys didn't reach the end of this movie, this movie lifts from The Day After Tomorrow in the way that, yes, you two can outrun cold. Because cold moves, cold respects the hallway. If you are traveling down, and the guy who has no redeeming capabilities or characteristics no redeeming characteristics whatsoever, he never does redeem himself. He's annoyed that his contracts are worthless at this point, and they fall away as the lead scientist is trying to bring him into the safety containment room, and he tries to pick up the papers frantically, and he stops in the hallway, and then the cold catches up to him, thereby freezing him and attaching him to the building. So lead scientist stares at him and it's like, damn it, and then runs to the door in safety, closes it, and then the cold cannot penetrate this door. This big yellow Nerf door cannot be penetrated by cold.
This was the door that his daughter had to open, huh?
Yeah, so that they sit there for a while. They get some radio communication. They find out there's some other people still alive on Earth. The way the Earth is now is like totally changed. Like there's the tropics of New York, and there's a big ice belt around the equator, which makes very little sense. And like a whole bunch of people are dead. They don't really stick to that too much because our brilliant sort of narrator, who is like Barbara Summers or something, I forget what her name is. She's the newscast lady who has like the most succinct newscasts I've ever seen. They're about 2.5 seconds long. She tells you the whole story in like from beginning to end, and you're done.
News
There's no
10.
room for there
We're
to be
fucked.
pretty much. And then the weird thing is something stood out to me as wrong from the very beginning of these newscasts. I'm looking at this. I'm like, KPOV. I'm like, there's something wrong about that. I know when I lived in California, all the call letters started with K. But out here on the East, it starts with a W. And it turns out that little thing that was in the back of my head actually is one of the factual errors that it is on IMDb saying.
Well, here's another stupid factual error. I mean, it's just monumentally dumb. Part of the magnetic polar shift means, of course, that your magnetic compass will point to a different area on the Earth, right? It won't point north, it'll point to wherever the magnetic north has shifted, which is true. That makes sense. If the magnetic north pole were to shift dramatically to like the southeast, then that's the way your needle would point at that section. So the dumbass climatologist tells his dumbass ex-wife that what she needs to do is keep an eye on the compass, and when the needle hits a certain point on the compass, they need to make sure they close the safety door behind them, even if the climatologist can't get back in time, because it's the only way they can make sure that they are safe from the terrible cold. Except for the fact that that's entirely dependent upon how you hold the compass and which direction you're facing. The needle is going to move independently of the rest of the compass. The way the compass works is that the needle will point in a direction, and then you align the compass with the point of the needle so that you know which way is north, right? If you're holding the compass steady and you see the needle slowly move from the north to the east, you could see that the pole was actually shifting. But if you yourself are moving in any way, like you're twisting or turning in any way, then your compass in relation to the needle will change direction anyway.
Right.
So marking a part on the compass and saying when the needle gets here doesn't make any fucking sense.
Right.
It does.
That's right. It's a handheld compass. It's not like it's like mounted to anything.
It's not a digital compass. It's a physical compass with a needle. And just like I said, if you hold a compass, the needle points north. If you spin the compass to the left or to the right, the needle will continue pointing in the same direction, but the compass, it'll end up saying west or south or whatever. But that's not really, that doesn't magically make that direction west or south. It just means it's not aligned properly.
The point of a compass, or at least a handheld free movement compass, is the needle moves where to magnetic north. That's what it does.
So saying that when it reaches this point on the compass makes literally no sense at all. It is no help whatsoever. And I sit there and I look at this and I'm thinking, okay, I get that they don't understand climatology. I get that they don't understand that if the magnetic poles shifted, that it wouldn't cause this worldwide instant climate change.
They could have hired. They could have given an internship to a second-year geology student.
Yeah,
and he would have been able to at least say, "Wait, I don't think that's right."
Yeah. It kills me that they didn't even understand how a fucking compass works. It just shows no one's ever used one. No one had used a compass. What they were thinking of was a compass that would show you what the direction is based upon your facing a certain way. Like if you had a compass in your car and you're driving and it says northeast, you're like, oh, all right, so that direction's northeast. And if you somehow independently knew that in fact you were looking at the south and not the northeast, you would say, something's gone wrong. It doesn't work. It just has an independent point of reference. Also, I have a couple of other moments, and literally this is just a couple of moments because I didn't watch very much more than that before we started this. There's a bit where asshole entrepreneur dude is stuck in an elevator, and dumbass ex-wife decides to go and rescue asshole entrepreneur. And so dumbass ex-wife is on top of the elevator. And asshole entrepreneur is screaming at her like, why don't you help me out? And she's screaming at him because the elevator starts moving, and she's screaming at him to stop the elevator so that she isn't crushed to death, although apparently they're nowhere near the top. And he's meanwhile not saying anything. He's just like, fuck you, I'm gonna take this elevator as far as it'll go. Elevator stops because the power goes out again. She gets out. She manages to open up the door for him. He says something along the lines of, you were safe. We weren't anywhere near the top of the building. He never responded to her. So he never reassured her or anything. But he's acting already all huffy because she was concerned for her life. And then she says, first he says to her, there's a helicopter waiting for me. I can save your life. And she says, no, I can save your life. And you're just lucky I'm nice, mister. And I'm like, really? Who the fuck wrote that line? You're just lucky I'm nice, mister. I'm like, mister? Seriously? Her lines were awful and poorly delivered, but to be fair, they were really bad lines. And then there's a moment where this guy's helicopter, and I don't know what was supposed to cause this, but this guy's helicopter, which is flying over the building, it hasn't landed, drifts It's all CGI and it's terrible. It drifts over the building itself, and the angle is at the bottom of the building facing up. So the helicopter disappears from our view, and then there's a CGI explosion, which looks like it's just the basic CGI explosion that comes with your basic film editing software. So there's helicopter goes over the top of the building. We can't see it anymore. Explosion. So not even really sure exactly what happened. Meanwhile, they represent the explosion on the inside of the building by throwing foam blocks down a stairway and down the elevator shaft, some of which come out through the open elevator doors. Asshole entrepreneur and dumbass ex-wife are walking away from those elevator doors, and then they fall, and it's very clear that both of them are attempting to fall in slow motion, but everything else is moving at normal speed, and the film is shot at normal speed, and it looks like the most awkward thing in the world. And if you too want to see the worst explosion and reaction to said explosion in film history, go to the 1 hour, 8 minute mark of Absolute Zero. Because when Iyaz got on the video and when I was on the video, first thing before you joined, Eric, I had told him I was just watching the same moment in this movie 4 times, 5 times in a row. And it was this moment, the hour. Because watching the two of them, I mean, literally, like, the guy throws his arms in the air very slowly and then just starts to bend his knees. He doesn't even, neither of them fall. It's both of them are like in the process of acting as if they are being pushed down, but the scene cuts before they fall down. So he just throws his arms up and then bends his knees slightly, and then it cuts. And it's moving so slowly while the foam rubble is flying past them. It's like, wow, this is possibly the most incompetent thing I've seen in a really long time. So yeah, that moment is worth watching more than once. And by the way, that is as far as I got. I didn't once I saw that glorious moment of failure, I couldn't bother going further. I had to just keep experiencing that one moment over and over again. In fact, if I could have an animated GIF going from the point where the helicopter flies over the building and explodes to the two people reacting, I'd be happy. Are you watching it now, Eric?
No, but I will send that GIF to you.
Okay, good. Yeah, it's around the, like I said, around the 1 hour, 8 minute mark.
1-8.
Let's make that. Let's make that the PWP Twitter account avatar. Just this guy falling down over and over again. I don't know if you can do animated GIFs. I think you can. But yeah, speaking of that asshole guy, remember I told you he gets frozen while he's trying to get his papers? Well, yeah. I don't know if they timed it wrong, but he sticks to the wall first, freezes, and then the rest of it freezes after him. So I don't know. Maybe his timing is just shit, because I don't remember that part where he's falling in slow motion, because I just couldn't pay attention to this movie. I love watching bad movies, but this, I think, had the sin of being so boring that it just never pulls you in. It wasn't like, I watched Airplane versus Volcano, not for this show, okay, with Dean Cain and Robin Givens. Now that fucking movie was so bad, with such crappy dialogue, incomprehensible like logic. There's no way that any of this should work. Yeah, but it could pull you in, because you're like, well, there's Superman and there's Robin Givens. All right, let's see how this is gonna go. But you just don't have that in this movie. Maybe it's just not enough star power, or like D-list star power. That's probably the problem.
Maybe. Well, guys, should we pick another one for next week? I picked
Whose
this
turn
last
is it?
one. It's not mine, because I picked Absolute Zero, and
I think I'd pick Pinocchio's Revenge somehow. So that must have been my turn.
You did, because I had a different one in mind at first, and then you demanded Pinocchio's Revenge, so we switched it up.
I think I mentioned it. I don't think I demanded it. And if that's the case, I truly apologize for demanding Pinocchio's Revenge, since Pinocchio does not take revenge upon anything.
Right. So, Eric, I think it's your turn. Oh, and Eric goes away. Look at that.
He's left. He's left the building.
The room.
I don't think we've ever had that happen before in an episode.
There we are calling on Eric, and he had left the room.
You went to the 3-shot When I Run Away.
Well, we were giving you the chance to pick the next movie since it's your turn.
Oh, crap.
But you have to be present for that.
Oh, I hope I don't get skipped for that because I really wanted to watch this one.
Oh, shit. He's already got one in mind.
This is not good.
What's the movie?
Oh, you know what it was. I said it like 4 weeks ago.
Oh, yeah. Like I remember anything from 4 weeks ago. What was it?
It is Left Behind, the movie.
Oh, Jesus Christ. You sure you don't want to go straight to Left Behind 2, Tribulation Force?
I'm just saying.
This is a Kirk Cameron movie?
Oh, yes. God. When 100 million people vanish from Earth, a man tries to locate his wife and son. As he digs deeper, he finds the ansers.
I believe it's based on the books. Bible. Which are based on the Bible.
It's based on
I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure that I can watch this at work without my fear of porn happening during it.
Yeah, you'll probably be good.
Unless there's a bunch of sinners who are having sex who get left behind, which is possible.
Okay.
Yeah, but that'll totally be PG at least.
So are you seeing some of the movies that are suggested based upon this choice? One of them is The Mark, which
that's the first one I got.
Yeah, it shows a barcode and 666, which makes sense. I remember makes sense in the sense that there are people who have said that the barcode was representational of the mark of the beast, and that that the adoption of the barcode was a mark of the end of times and the coming of of Armageddon, all that kind of stuff.
So here's the question: the sequel, Jonathan, is rated lower than the first one. So do you just want to go straight to the sequel? Because I have 1.5 stars on Left Behind 2, and I have 2.
Let me read what the description of Left Behind 2 is, and then we can decide. The Christians left behind after the rapture find themselves threatened by a man they believe to be the Antichrist, UN President Nikolai Carpathia. Carpathia!
Yeah.
Okay, wait. So wait. The Christians who are left behind after the rapture, does that just mean they were really shitty Christians?
Right, because if they weren't raptured, then
they're still
they must.
Right.
Okay, so which one do we watch? Do we watch the first Left Behind? Do we skip the first Left Behind and go straight to Left Behind 2? Because here's the thing. I don't think it's really going to matter if we see the first one or not. So it's up to you guys. What do you think?
You know what? I'd rather watch a movie about the Antichrist. So let's go with 2.
Your vote goes to Left Behind 2. Well, you're the one who chooses, so it is added to my list.
Okay, I gotta take the other one off my list so I don't accidentally watch the wrong one.
I have just removed that one from my list.
I am terrified because the other thing is like one of the movies that are suggested is Unstoppable, which is a Kirk Cameron documentary, and seeing a look into his faith.
Oh God, Left Behind World at War, which I assume is 3.
What?
Not entirely sure. I only
Luke Gossett Jr.
I only have 1 star.
Okay. After a global catastrophe that saw millions vanish, one man unites the world. Some believe he is not their ideal leader, but rather the Antichrist.
So are we watching this one?
Man.
Oh, hang on. Let me see what. All right, that one says best guess for Jonathan, 1 star. The average is 3.5. Are you?
I got 1 star. Iyaz, what do you have?
Well, I'm in my different account now, so I don't get the same rating.
Right.
See,
okay.
For all 3 of these movies, just so you know, it predicts 1 star for me. And for all 3 of these, out of the 3 movies, the one that has the lowest average rating is the first one.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, at 3.3.
So that's a problem with figuring that out. Like, we know it's going to be harmful. So do we watch the worst?
No, here's what I say: we watch the second one. That way, we get the middle of the trilogy. I mean, clearly, this has got to be the Empire Strikes Back of this trilogy, right?
Sure.
Well, yeah. I think the reason why 2 and 3 are rated higher is probably because people who watch the first one.
They're
right. They're like, okay, Kirk Cameron's on this. I know him from Growing Pains. I'll watch this, and they're like, oh, okay, this is not Growing Pains. Then people are like, this was fucking awesome, or this was so great. I'm gonna watch the second one. So they rated higher because they're like,
the second one is preaching to the choir more than the first one is.
Very fitting. Yes. So we're watching 2,
We
Tribulation
are watching.
Force.
We are watching
Right.
2. Let's do
We're
it.
I'm gonna
watching 2,
remove.
and if somehow we find 2 to be so compelling, you may feel free to go ahead and subject yourself to 1 and 3, not necessarily in that order.
I might make us watch the Kirk Cameron documentary next time, just because.
This is a
Fair
documentary.
warning, then.
Everybody.
Here's
yeah.
hoping that this movie is so
wait,
terrible
was it-
that you can't
is it-
even bear
is
the
it
thought of
Absolute
watching
Zero?
another second
Okay.
of Kirk Cameron.
You
What's
don't
that?
get it. Absolute Zero was Iyaz's pick. So
No,
next
it
No,
was
that was
Jonathan's
my
pick.
pick. No, it was my
Oh, that
pick.
My
was your
pick.
pick?
My pick was
Yeah.
Pinocchio's Revenge,
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
sort of.
All right.
Because I don't think it was even my turn. I just suggested it, and it was a
No,
bad
it was my
time.
turn, and you stole my fucking turn, and then I made us watch
I-
Absolute Zero. See,
I don't think it's even possible for me to do that. It's not like I can be like, "Ha ha! You guys will watch this fucking movie." Because you gotta be like, "Well, fuck you! I'm not watching this movie."
no, you were sabotaging me left and right, Iyaz, because the first like 3 fucking movies I suggested you had already goddamn watched.
That was
Oh,
the problem.
yeah.
And
I was-
I've already told you guys that I've watched Airplane versus Volcano, which was it's actually so much better than the shit we've been watching lately.
I was trying to find a really terrible natural disaster porn movie, and the problem was you've already fucking watched all of them.
Man, there was some real, man. There's some 40 days and 40 nights. I think it is. That one is flat out, obviously a biblical. Like, here's the flooding, but they don't even bother with any pseudoscience. They're like, shit, it's gonna rain. That's basically the. That's the
I
whole
think we should.
plot.
We gotta make our own disaster porn movie. It's just gonna be called Shit. It's gonna rain. And be
Anyhow,
like we'll have like the money grubbing entrepreneur will just be like swimming in umbrellas. Come on, bitches! Yeah. It'll be awesome. It'll be
And
like
the hero is
our-
like a.
our- yeah, our hero's
Poncho.
just dressed in galoshes and a poncho.
Either he's
No,
Poncho
no.
Man or he's
It's
like
just-
the
Come with
Roto-Rooter
me
Man.
if you want to stay
Sponge.
dry.
He's a sponge.
He's a sponge. No, that has to be his child. His child is a sponge.
This
Just to
child
keep
is-
the sponge safe.
Let's
Jesus.
let's make sure that the symbolism is really beat you over the head. His son is a sponge. It's like, that kid's sure quick. I taught him something. He just absorbs things.
that was like a Jonathan worthy pun right there.
Well, you see, when you saw what happened, that Jonathan basically does all of my dumb jokes when he's exhausted. Like, I have to be sharp to give that level of performance, and I'm not even close to that. Anyway,
Fantastic.
so we're watching
So
the second Left Behind movie.
Left Behind
next
2,
week.
Tribulation
You guys can watch it
Force.
too.
Yeah, let us know how far you got, or if you were smart enough to avoid watching it in the first place.
Oh,
Eric, are
the
you still giving away
documentary is called Unstoppable. Oh, jeez.
Yeah, huh?
I'm gonna watch this anyway. Like, it's gonna happen.
Jesus Christ. All right, shall we look into the future?
Yes, let's look into the future. Next week on Podcast Without Pretense.
Guys, I've got a title for our movie. SpongeBob After Tomorrow.
I just got this new packet of stickers from Eric for Podcast Without Pretense.
He was saying this thing about how the banana was perfectly designed, and that's what it really caught me.